My name is Josephine Achieng. I champion ethical data practices, co-creating with rural girls and young women in Kakamega County. I'm honored to moderate this session and this conversation today on behalf of the organizations that I'll be inviting on board, that is Rural Women Action on Street Health, Story Zangu Hub, and African Digital Rights and Governance Initiative, which are organizations that are working with marginalized communities while navigating both physical and digital spaces. So you realize that for the many communities that we work with, including rural women, young people, key populations, and also survivors of violence, data governance to us is not just a technical issue, it is a human rights issue. It is about our safety, it is about our dignity, it's also about our visibility, and sometimes it's usually about our survival. So today's session will really center on those voices that are often missing from policy tables, which include communities whose lives really are affected by digital systems, yet again whose lived experiences are what we use to curate some of this data. So through storytelling, dialogue, reflections, we are going to explore ethical data governance, which must move beyond policies and algorithms to include the lived realities. So I'm very privileged to welcome the panel who will be speaking us today. I will introduce Hassan Kibwana. Hassan is a documentary and conceptual photographer and founder of Story Zangu Hub, which is a storytelling platform documenting real community experiences. His work explores resilience, justice, culture, and everyday's life through ethical visual storytelling. So let us clap for him as he takes his seat. Then I will introduce Abigail Wakarima. Abigail is a young person and a climate and public health advocate and systems thinker who uses data, innovation, and community engagement through storytelling to be able to advance sustainable solutions that protect both people and the planet. So karibu sana, Abigail. And next I will introduce Belinda Maya Nabwire. Belinda is a digital rights champion. She's a young person who works closely to advance data justice and digital safety for girls, for young girls and women in Kenya. Her work focuses on ethical data governance, online protection, and also empowering marginalized communities. Last but not least, on the panel, I would like to invite Annette Opio, the founder and executive director of Africa Digital Rights and Governance Initiative. Let's please clap for her as she comes. She leads efforts to advance equitable, rights-centered digital transformation across Africa. Her work focuses on digital rights, data governance, and governance of emerging technologies, with a particular emphasis on ensuring that innovation and technological growth do not undermine fundamental human rights. She actively engages in regional and global policy conversations on digital governance, contributing to dialogue and data protection and artificial intelligence. So karibuni sana, let's give them another round of applause. And to begin our session, we will start by a short video from Story Zangu Hub, because we believe that storytelling is the most powerful way in which community can really express themselves. So this video just invites us to reflect on the human stories behind the data. So as you watch the video, would like you to be thinking around the questions of what happens when lived experiences become part of the evidence that also shapes policy and governance. Karibuni sana.
I also know how to do the compliance under 11, the case management, so that I would put that into use so that I give limited timelines. I'll deal with interlocutory applications, and I know that I am allowed by law to do shorter judgments to extempore so that I am able to manage the backlog that is heading the High Court at the moment. Honorable CJ, I bring to the court a hand worker, a person of integrity, the judicial craft that I have learned over the 18 years of sitting in court, the integrity that is required, and the work ethics required of a judge. I have never had integrity questions all throughout my career, and I intend to carry that forward to the High Court, given the opportunity to join the higher bench. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Your Honor, what is your understanding of a derivative action? And what are the conditions that have to be met by a party before that claim can be lodged in court?
Thank you, Commissioner. Derivative action is an action which ordinarily is filed by a minority shareholder to enforce their rights when they feel that probably the majority shareholders are not living in accordance with the statutory requirements of the Insolvency Act.
Okay. And what are the conditions that have to be met?
The conditions, I think that first of all, and derivative suit, you have to be a minority shareholder.
I don't know, maybe the media, please check why we are having two. I don't know where the are we good now?
To resolve the questions in issue.
Okay. Now, what would be the difference between a derivative action and an action that is brought because of unfairness that is caused to one of the shareholders?
Yes, an action brought by the shareholders. Both of them are ways that you protect the minority shareholders in insolvency, but the is filed on behalf of the company by the minority shareholder. This other one is in personal capacity.
Does the second one need a leave of court?
Yes, I would think that it won't need leave of court.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Honorable Jay.
I think someone is on a Zoom call, so maybe we can just proceed if we get a thumbs up from the media team. Are we good now to play the video, or we continue with this panel? Okay, thank you. All right, so as they sort that out, maybe we can continue. If we have a bit of time, we can watch the video at the end of the session, but also we can always share the link online so that you're able to watch later. So I would like to begin with Hassan, whose work with Storytelling Hub centers community voices and also lived experiences through storytelling. So our question today is on how Story Zangu Hub ensures that the stories that you document are not really treated as isolated cases, but also they need to come from a point of having credible evidence that can also inform data governance and policy discussions.
Thank you. I'll say by capturing lived experiences through visual storytelling, that is through photography, videography, and interviews, to document how digital systems and policies affect communities in real life. When I say that, from the video you'll watch or you're about to watch, it is a story. It is a story about the missing children who go missing in our communities. You know, when children go missing, you'll find that you get to indicate some posters, the missing child posters. So when you put those posters up everywhere, some people take advantage of those posters. They take the number, they call you, they try to defraud you in one way or the other. Next is by analyzing these narratives to identify recurring patterns across different individuals or communities, revealing systemic issues rather than isolated incidents. And that is where these patterns are mapped to broader systems such as digital platforms to understand where governance gaps exist. These insights are translated into policy relevant reflections that highlight ethical risk, accountability gaps, and the need for people-centered safeguard. Through this approach, we ensure that lived experience is recognized as legitimate qualitative evidence within data governance conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing, and of course we missed the video on the lived experiences and the issues we are talking about when a child is missing, and we put our numbers up there so that we're being able to inform once this person has been caught. It's usually prompts people to a lot of online violence. But then now this brings us to the next questions, whereby I would like now to bring Belinda, who really works closely with rural women and girls on digital rights. And through RUASH, I'm aware they've been able to just figure out on intersecting how digital rights, gender justice, and community empowerment should happen, particularly on the essence of technology-facilitated GBV, whereby we see there's a lot of digital divide, especially in the rural areas. But then RUASH has been able to build digital literacy within the communities, and also just creating a safe space for learning, so that women and girls are able to discuss both the online and the offline harms that happen. So with that context, Belinda, I would like to ask you, technology-facilitated GBV is rising across digital platforms. We've seen the stories of, you know, Tumtumia Salamu, how women and men actually get harassed. The other day, a man was kicked on International, Women's Day, and it really brought a lot of discourse, because then that violence was being done by a fellow man who's also a governor. But then I would really like to ask you, what role can data governance play in rural communities, and especially with your case whereby you really advocate for technology-facilitated gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you very much, Josephine, for the question. Data governance can help rural communities address technology-facilitated gender-based violence, that is TFGBV, by ensuring safe collection and management of data that is on online abuse. In that we are coming from rural communities, you understand, rural communities, people are marginalized, like we are seeing, we are not important people because of where we come from. So through this, it supports better reporting systems that protect us. Let's say we get to understand that people come to our counties, they say they have an initiative. We as girls, or the women, we find ourselves, we are lucky. We share our lived experiences, not knowing our stories will be leaked online. then after that, people start traumatizing us. We feel stigmatized, yeah, and things like that.
Thank you for sharing your lived experience, Belinda. And what really caught my eye is when researchers come to the community with all these indicators, collecting data, but yet communities don't really get an opportunity just to try and find out what are the findings, what are some of the research deliberations that were being made. But also we really appreciate having lived experiences on this panel, and that brings, the role of storytelling, because what you're really talking about is how are our stories as communities packaged outside there. And that's why I would really like to push this question to Abigail, whose work mainly is around digital storytelling. And please just tell us why you think storytelling is important in data governance conversations.
Thank you so much, Josephine. Storytelling bridges the gap between the evidences and the lived experiences, in the sense that many a times, I think especially 8 months before elections, that is next year, most people will ask, what is the voice on the ground? The common term is, what to ground wanasema aje? Skiza ground. From that you'll know how to make your next move. But when it comes to data governance, I'd say that storytelling is a very important aspect, in the sense that you'll actually get to experience it with them through the data that has now been turned into visuals. You'll get to understand the social aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it. While you're submitting your monitoring and evaluation report to your funders, to your donors, they're very happy to see the numbers many a times, yeah? But most do ask themselves this question: I really want to see how it went on. I'd want to hear more from the community members. And during monitoring and evaluation consultancies, we've been able to see where people forge their data. They don't use the real data from the community members, from enumeration and data collection. And it's quite sad, because for me, I'd say I have been able to bring in the aspect of using storytelling in every project, from mobilization to the implementation of the project. And with that, we are also able to make sure that the community members understand, why do we need your data, why are we doing this project, and why do we need to do it in your community? Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think those are very good deliberations, but then I would really still want to throw you back to you again. In terms of what do you rather do just to ensure the ethical part of it when it comes to digital storytelling is upheld?
Okay, thank you, Josephine. With Stories Zangu Hub, we have been able to ensure that there is consent, protecting the community members, we respect them. Other than that, we ensure that we protect their dignity. It is out of humanization. Data sometimes can be very dehumanizing, and it's very important that as a virtuous citizen, now I talk as a systems thinker, as a virtuous citizen, we make sure that community members are able to understand why we are going to use this data. Is it going to harm them? Is it going to harm us? Yeah, in that sense. So with that, we have been able to incorporate a good number of data protection policies in most of our projects.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those deliberations. And thank you for the sharing the ethical bit of it, because when we started the conversation, we wanted to think on issues around ethics, on issues around storytelling, and also on issues around engaging marginalized communities. But then we also have Annette, who's also on the panel. And because I know you're a governance expert, and you're going to give us expert voices on a community panel, I would really like to invite your perspective in terms of the ethical principles in technology, which are widely discussed, but then when it comes to implementation, often it lags behind. We've attended sessions from yesterday, and everyone is talking on how we need to collaborate, but then also when people go back to the community, people tend again to start working in silos. So what are some of the practical steps that you could share with us, which governments can take, or even policymakers or the people who are holding the power, just to ensure that ethics translates into accountability?
Okay, thank you, Josephine. Now, we realize that in very many digital spaces, we see strong commitments on ethical technology, but the challenge is that the ethics, it often remains at the level of principles rather than being enforced or enforceable practice. So, for ethics to translate into accountability, you know, someone being able to be answerable, government must embed into, maybe embed those regulations, or maybe embed the ethics into regulations, system design, and oversight mechanisms. Now, some of these mechanisms that maybe we might, I think might help when it comes to, you know, the enforceable practice would be to require human rights and algorithmic impact assessment. Now, one thing that we have seen as a country, most of the things that we do, most of the projects that are carried out in this country, we see a tendency where the problems or the issues raised about projects are repetitive. For example, currently we are into the digital ID era, where Kenya is transitioning to digital ID. And before the current digital ID, we had the Huduma number. There are a lot of issues that were raised, you know, during the Huduma number, and that is why it was considered unconstitutional. Among the issues raised were issues of data protection. Okay, so for us to ensure that there is ethical practice and it is enforceable and it is something that is working for everyone, the government, it was advisable for the government to go back to the people, you know, conduct an impact assessment. Okay, with conducting an impact assessment, there is reduced risk of exclusion. Okay, so basically it requires the government to maybe, before deploying the large scale, you know, digital ID or maybe the digital systems, ensure that issues raised or maybe programs, you know, predictive analytic tools or AI systems used in the public service are able or are in that state that can be used by, you know, even the grassroots. By grassroots, and in this instance, I mean even my mother, who is at the very rural area, who, those parents of ours who never went to school, it needs to be something that is very understandable. And through impact assessments, we are able to know which areas, you know, need improvement, which areas were there exclusions, which areas did we experience, you know, discriminations, which areas were there data privacy risks, and, you know, potential misuse by authorities or third party. Now, just for example, in the instance of the Huduma number still, we were able to, a lot of money was used, which is taxpayers' money, and a new system of the digital ID that is called the Maisha number, or the unique personal identifier, has been rolled out. But at the beginning of its rollout, we realized that there were still a few gaps and loopholes that we experienced during Huduma number that we were experiencing with the unique personal identifier. Through impact assessment, it would be easy for the government to identify those gaps to avoid the repetitive nature of issues. Another measure would be to strengthen independent, regulatory oversight. Now, data protection authorities should be adequately funded. Now, I don't know how many counties or sub-counties, have access to the offices of data protection. I don't know if everyone, and in this case you're talking about the communities, in this case you're talking about grassroots. Are they aware that, or are they able to recognize issues of data privacy when they are faced with one? And if they are faced with those problems, are they able to address them? Are they able to take them to the right offices? And if they are able to take them to the right offices, then are those offices readily available for them in those different areas? Now, with strengthening the independent regulatory oversight, we will also be helping, it will be possible and very easy for the government to conduct audits, to identify, if policies are really working for the communities, areas in which these policies need to be corrected. Now, when there are also these audits that can be carried out, you are able to know which private sectors are data holders, and then if they are data holders, are they following the right regulations, in storing data or in collecting of this data. Another thing that regulatory oversight will also help us do is to identify, again, from the problems or from issues raised by the people in the grassroots. It will help us, in improving digital systems, improving issues, or maybe it would be easier, to involve the people in coming up with solutions towards or around issues of the digital transition, or maybe issues of data governance. Now, another thing, it would also ensure accountability. Now, accountability would require these institutions that can investigate, sanction, and require corrective measures. If we have regulatory systems within our counties and sub-counties, and even to the village levels, then it is easier, to seek accountability. It is easier even to follow up and find out areas in which these measures are not being followed, or areas in which policies are not being rightfully implemented. Now, another measure would be to mandate transparency for algorithmic systems. Now, governments should require organizations deploying automated decisions, making systems to disclose. You always be able to disclose what the system is used for. When I go to an organization or I go to a company that is a data collector, then I should be able to know what the system is used for, what data it relies on, how decisions are made, what safeguards exist against bias. This, especially for sectors like, the digital lending. Some years back, I think there were cases where people would get loans, and these loan apps would really, they would really enter or use the people's data that they were taking wrongfully. And so with the lack of regulations that were there during those times, a lot of people were scammed, a lot of people were conned of the little they had. So when we have a mandated transparency, where the government takes initiative and takes mandate on ensuring that these regulations have been followed, on ensuring that each and every institution is mandated, and the government understands whatever systems are in these institutions and whatever data is in that institution, then I think we can easily ensure ethical practice when it comes to issues of data governance and digitization.
Okay, thank you so much, Annette, for your submissions. And I really agree with you on the recommendations and especially on what the governments need to do, and also in terms of everyone's voices just being on board. But then again, we've also seen scenarios where these digital tools are being introduced, and especially to communities to give solutions, but that may not usually be the case. And some of the challenges are what, Annette, you've talked about and what you've mentioned. Some of them have been good practices, very well documented, but then when it comes to implementation, other things happen. So I don't know if Belinda or Abigail would like to reflect on that.
I'd like to say, well, data tells us what is happening, but stories tells us why it matters or why it's important. And it depends with how you do your storytelling. Storytelling is something very new in the field, in the market right now, and most people have not been able to add it to their budget. Some will say it's very expensive. Why do we need to do that? Well, I think for each project manager that we might be having in the room right now, they can take in note to be adding storytelling as part of their budgets in the project that they'll be leading. And it will be very important, not only for you, but to the community members and also to your donors, because they'll be able to actually feel what was happening. They'll get a chance to experience it. And other than that, yesterday we had a conversation on how we can add storytelling to our systems. And I think as part of systems change and systems thinking, it's very important that we co-design our systems and add storytelling as a very important aspect to it. And we can also try and empower community members in matters storytelling, and specifically storytelling in collection of data and how we are going to use their data. Yeah.
Okay. So I've seen a signal that we have only 10 minutes remaining, and we didn't want to finish without giving an opportunity to the audience to maybe ask questions. Then we will wrap up with a word from the panelists, and we can watch the video as we transition to the next session. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions beyond this time. So anyone with a question is invited.
Hi everyone, my name is Abigail as well. I wanted to ask about storytelling, particularly because it's a lot of visuals and it's a narrative that you're giving. Now, you mentioned privacy policies, notices and consent forms. Now, you're down in the grounds. How do you mix those two so that then the message of protect your data, or whoever has it will protect it, you do your part of understanding your rights? How do you blend those two? Because a lot of the times you find explaining what consent is, it's not one of those things. For we who are in the industry, it's fine, we understand it, but then there's a communication gap there where you're using words. People don't read privacy policies. I'm sure even today when you logged in, I doubt anybody here selected, yes, I'll read the privacy policy of the hotel or of Amnesty or Open Institute. So how do you then, now when you're on ground, to the shushus, to, you know, mashinani in a sense, or just the common mananchi, how do you then use storytelling to bridge that gap so that people understand data protection, data privacy?
Thank you, Abigail. I think I've only said Abigail while introducing myself. To answer you, I think that's what I was talking about, co-designing the systems, because most organizations have been using English as a language of communication, even while going to the field. And it's becoming very hard. And you'll notice that most people tend to hire facilitators from those particular communities. So for us, what we do, when you're hiring facilitators, you have to make sure that they understand the local language of that community. And if you're working with grassroots, let's say we are coming from a different county. Let's say we are coming from Nyeri County. We have a project in Nyeri County. We cannot recruit someone from Kisumu who's not well versed with the language that they're speaking in Nyeri County. So before we kick on with our project, the very first thing we are going to have is training the facilitators for them to understand the consent. And from there, we'll be able to start translating this complex language to something simpler, that when they talk to the community members, it will be very easy for them to understand. So if I have a consent form right here, I won't go and start reading it out to a group of community members from Nyeri County. It will be very complex for them to understand. So what we do, you just use that language with which they understand, that which they've been born with, yeah? You translate it to them, and they'll be able to understand more. You don't just translate, you translate for them to understand, yeah? So that's one of the techniques that we normally use in storytelling. And as a fellow from the 50% under the Club of Rome, in systems thinking, what we're trying to do is to really change the system in order to include everyone. What I normally say is, if you really want to make your objective or your goal inclusive, then budget for the inclusion of them. Don't just make them stay there whole time they're not included. A good example is us having an interpreter here. For most conferences that I've gone to, we are always pushing for interpreters, for the Braille systems, for the persons living with disability. And I think that's a commendable thing to the organizers for including an interpreter. And I hope that next time we'll be having a Braille system. It's all about inclusion, and in inclusion, it's budgeting for the inclusion of them. Yes.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? Because I can see the prefects are really on time. Maybe I'll just take closing remarks from the panelists, and then I would invite the media team to just share the video from Story Zangu Hub. Initially, we were supposed to start with the video so that it, weaves into the discussion, but then we'll just think about it backwards. So we'll start from Annette. Give us your closing remarks. Belinda, Abigail, Hassan, then we can do the video. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you once again. So just going back to the ethics, we realize that ultimately ethics becomes meaningful when it is embedded in law, enforced by independent institutions, and supported by mechanisms that allow individuals to challenge harm. And for individuals to identify the harm and challenge it, they must be involved. Meaningful involvement in creating these laws and being part of creation of or coming up with whatever ethics and policies that surround matters or issues of data governance. Yeah.
Thank you, Annette. Belinda, please tell us what you think organizations maybe can consider before introducing, technology to vulnerable communities and also the rural girls and young women that you work with in Kakamega.
Thank you again for the time. Organizations will first understand the local context and real needs of the community before technology. The rural communities, yes, I come from Kakamega. You can't tell me I'll focus on technology and I don't have unga. Yeah, I'm a lawyer. I won't focus on the technology. First, I'll focus on food before technology. Other than that, they must consider our people from the marginalized communities. Wale wandani ndani. Will my shosho from the rural community access the technology? Will my papa from the rural community also access the technology? So they should consider all the people without leaving anyone behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for while we are in the house, I hope you're happy, you're well represented. Abigail?
I'd say